real-time updates, breaking news, and important information directly from the source. With our WhatsApp channel, you'll always know what's happening when it's happening. Joining is easy. Use your phone camera, scan this QR code, tap follow, and that's it. You're in. Be sure to tap the notification bell to never miss an update. Stay informed, stay empowered. Join the conversation with the Office of the Prime Minister Communications WhatsApp channel today.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man
is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on WhatsApp Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
WhatsApp Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I would ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren.
WESN.
It's one thing for your enemies to criticize you. It's another thing for your victims. Now, of course, saying that someone is a victim of someone else, unless you have a conviction, ultimately, without that, one could argue it's subjective opinion. However, given how events unfolded in the public eye, I would argue that it is not unreasonable to consider the pariah divers victims of the nation. I don't want to necessarily say victims of the government, because to some extent we all do have to realize that while in a minor way, maybe even almost insignificant way, and an indirect way to be sure, we are responsible for a society that has allowed for a government, that has allowed for this tragedy not just to happen, potentially unnecessarily, but also to have no actual consequence to ensure that it would not happen again. Christopher Boudram is someone who none of us will ever understand what he went through. Not even family members of murder victims. It's a different level. Some of the difference is not necessarily more severe, but rather it's off to the side in its own category of its own. He didn't just have to deal with survivor's guilt after promising the deceased that he will send help for them, but also he had to live through that ordeal for however long it was. We're not entirely sure. Minutes, hours, doesn't matter. Just being stuck in a pipe where you could barely see. There's footage of it. It's undeniable. It's undeniable of the fact that no rescue was undertaken and the reasoning behind it is insufficient. It's undeniable to the fact that justice, at the very least, is so delayed, we must now question if it will ever apply. The police investigation is now ongoing. They're now seeking expert advice. Government doesn't necessarily have control over the police. This is something that we have championed, but they do have a tone setting and oversight and leadership aspect. And one of the things that we do have to ask is the investigation so far delayed because of the politics involved in the situation? And I don't know if I'll go beyond that because I don't want to delve too deep into that details. I already have details to delve into, which is the fact that when Mr. Boudram says it may not be guaranteed, but I am sure life would be better than living under the PNM led by Stuart Young. Ironically, Stuart Young was one of the few minor good things coming out of the tragedy in the sense that he had to rescue the Paria board from their complete lack of ability. And let's be clear, I am assessing them based on similar criteria I assessed earlier with Christopher. And while I didn't necessarily tell people that thought I was treating her unfairly, I told you so. At the end of the day, you could tell by someone's leadership ability, given their lack of communication skills, particularly in a crisis. And then, of course, the decision-making from, I guess, to some extent now, are they trying to throw mid-level management under the bus, but not completely, which makes me wonder if maybe some people know too many things about too many people in higher places, and they are, unfortunately, for the higher-ups, not expendable enough to be made scapegoats because they don't want the truth to come out as to what actually happened. These are questions we have based on what we see. And because we have these questions, and because Mr. Boudram is speaking not as a political activist who is bandwagoning on a cause, he is the cause. He was there. He suffered through it. He probably wishes he didn't have to go through whatever it is he had to go through. The fact of the matter is, it seems as though, and I could be wrong, but is it that the PNM have to deal with internal politics and political promises and all of that jazz, and that's why they can't treat with this situation? Or is it that they lack the competencies to treat with this situation? So as to give the nation confidence that a proper solution occurred, and that includes the victims' families and the survivor. The fact that I think there are many of us who are not UNC supporters, who do not necessarily want to jump on the bandwagon of following Mr. Boudram's statements of voting out the PNM just because. But when we assess the situation objectively, we have too many questions, and there are not enough answers from the PNM. These are unforced errors. And in my opinion, one of the greatest sins in governance are unforced errors. Errors that you make because of foolishness. And I have to say right now, foolishness, because I don't know exactly why the situation has resulted in what it has so far, but we lack any reasonable explanation. If there is a reasonable explanation, why is it you can't give it to us? This is similar to the Jamaica Petrojam deal. There are more details, while not necessarily fully exonerating the situation. There were more details that Minister Young himself could have given us as Minister of Energy in order to better communicate the situation. But, as always, politicians believe they know what they're doing, when more often than not, how many times has the PNM felt as though they said the wrong thing? And it makes me wonder if they honestly believe that the rest of us are being unreasonable, as opposed to them not understanding their own incompetence. But hey, that's one of the, there's that phenomenon where people that aren't smart don't realize that they're not smart. Oh wait, politicians are smart, right? But when they speak, they don't necessarily use all of their noggin. Unless it is that they have some extra motivation, some other incentive that we're not supposed to know about. Is that the case or not? We don't know. We will continue to have these questions because you're making unforced errors that, on the surface, appear very stupid. So then why are we supposed to have confidence in you? Because to be fair to opponents of the PNM's status and job performance, one could argue, essentially has trended downwards. It wasn't so bad at the start, but coming down to the end, there were a lot more questionable things, including the Auditor General situation, the meritless situation, the crime situation, how public health has been managed post-COVID with the NICU situation, the Brent Thomas situation, the AV drilling situation. Here's the real problem, though. The real problem is we have an incumbent with all of these controversies. There are some that I probably didn't even mention that I can't remember right now. And then, on the flip side of that, we have the opposition leader. She's saying the PNM has sought to vilify East Indians as thieving, lying, devil-worshipping, coconut oil head and living in lagoons. Okay, I can understand supporters saying vile things. I've seen supporters on both sides say vile things. I can understand that members of the PNM say bad things about you, the opposition leader Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, for multiple reasons, whether justified or not. Some of them are rumors that persist outside of just the political environment and are pervasive throughout the country. How true they are, I have no idea. But I will always go back to a Morgan Freeman quote. Forgive me if I value the rhetorical or artistic voice of God. How to end racism? Stop talking about it. Stop making it an issue. If we still make it an issue, even when it isn't an issue, it's still a divisive issue. And that's the whole point of racism. It divides. Don't listen to whatever, I couldn't even listen to whatever nonsense Trevor Noah said, because at the very least, it allowed his critics to say that he was pro-segregation, if he didn't actually outright say that, which, let's not forget, that's what the civil rights movement marched to end. You know, the actual one that was cared about civil rights, not the one now that cares about political power and personal ambition and advancement. And is that what this is here? To what extent is the PNM's actions based, the bad faith ones, based in racism, or is it more based in political tribalism? It's not that you are East Indian, it's that you are yellow. the UNC, we are red, the PNM. You could be Afro-Trinidadian, you are yellow, the UNC, we are red, the PNM. Answer that. I have not necessarily seen, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've not necessarily seen anything to say, oh my gosh, there's so much racism. Now, I know that there is, well, the thing is, even on the local government level, UNC local government councillors and aldermen might complain, oh, we're not being funded. The problem is, the PNM ones aren't being funded either, they just can't complain about it. So when Rai Ragbir comes out and says, Kamala is engaging in racial fear-mongering, well, to some extent, I have to ask if that is true, and I suspect it is. What is the great event that is an indicator that this is going on in our society? Now, if you want to say that the PNM might be racially stereotyping, all right, fine. You know, there's probably some degree of that. But I have seen too many of its members be too diverse to say that that's their default position moving forward. Because the thing is, one could ask how many Afro-Trinbagonians are in UNC safe seats. So, why do I bring that up? I bring that up because when the PNM is potentially in the throes of the consequences of their unforced errors, what compounds the ridiculousness of the situation is the UNC says, wait a minute, hold my beer. I have my own unforced errors that I would like to inflict on the public, further making the situation more complicated than it has to be. Because if we had an opposition party that knew what it's doing and said mostly the right things and took mostly the right actions and mostly the right positions on various issues, it would simplify the election. And then we vote for them, and then if they fail, we vote them out and we vote for the PNM back, and that's a whole other rigmarole of this vicious cycle that we find ourselves in with this cartel. But like we can't, I understand that it's somewhat idealistic to say, well, the opposition just does the right thing, they get voted in. I don't think it'll necessarily make the situation better. I'm complaining about the fact that we can't even get the basics right. I'm in opposition, I just need to not say anything stupid. The government will sink themselves eventually. But I cannot help myself because I am cut from the same cloth. We're just different sides of one coin at the end of the day, because a lot of the errors in communication, a lot of the errors in policy decisions, a lot of the errors in political nepotism or favoritism or what have you, you see it permeate through the political environment across the aisle. The only difference is one side is in power and the other side is not. That is essentially the main difference, because we point out the hypocrisies that did exist from a PNM opposition. Now that they're in government, you hold them by the standards of their words as opposition, they can't stand up. You honestly think that if we were to hold the UNC to the standards of the things that they preach right now, they would stand up? I mean, compared to how the partnership went, it ain't gonna happen. They can't even stand by their own declarations for this election cycle. We don't need no help, but we would like to get help. Third parties only using UNC resources. Well, so far it looks as though all of their alliance members are dependent on them and their resources to move forward. Let's be frank now. So who do we trust? I understand Mr. Boudram's statement. He is the victim of a situation that to some extent is based on our society and to some extent is based on the government of the day. And yes, one could argue UNC took advantage of being the shoulder to cry on because it cost them nothing in that moment. If the roles were reversed, I don't know. I suspect that we may or may not be in a similar situation because the political appointees to the board would be different. That's the thing, right? They'll just be swapped out. And then who would be the UNC people on the board of Paria that the government would be trying to protect under UNC government if the roles were reversed? We don't know, right? That's a big, big what if. But at the end of the day, I can't fault Mr. Boudram because he suffered directly due to that situation. I am just on the outside looking in. I could afford to look at things from a wider lens and not just consider what was inflicted upon him and his co-workers. But he has to live with that. And now the government has to live with the fact that the Paria survivor is basically saying, don't vote for them because it's their fault. He has expressed a strong opinion on the matter. And I don't think anyone could blame him for that. And if the government doesn't like it, they only have themselves to blame. And if this gives the UNC an easy path to victory, why did we allow it to get to that point? Maybe if we did what we were supposed to do properly, we could actually be engaging in election debates based on various policy proposals that all have their merit, and we could pick the best from the lot, as opposed to just wishing, hoping, and praying that we could find somebody that would not present us some version of a dumpster fire of a political situation. We can't afford it anymore, that's the problem. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll head into the daily review. Stay tuned. This is Talking Upon the WESN. We'll be right back after this.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process, we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there next to himself. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have two of the three species of anteaters right here.
Before I get into the story, I do want to make this very important point. Now, maybe I missed it, but as far as I am aware, I have yet to hear any real good on paper sounding policy solution proposal to deal with crime. I understand what the UNC has been trying to sell us. That's not really a solution. The implementation of it might be physically not practical. I don't want to say impractical, but difficult to implement because literally you have to have someone process that paperwork. And then for those of us that don't necessarily want to have a gun or can't afford a gun, what are we supposed to do? Now, I myself personally would prefer not to have to try to buy a gun. I have no idea what the process entails. I have not gone through it. I know people that have guns. I get it. I don't fault them for having it. It is what it is. But to say that I need that to defend myself, because how are we gonna, our crime solution is to arm 1 million people, give or take? What about the old people that live on their own? They are supposed to pick up arms to defend themselves? Are we, essentially, it could evolve to the Wild Wild West. Meanwhile, and let's get into the actual story now. So I just want to put that out there. I have yet to hear any real policy proposal. It's just, it seems as though it's just bad idea on some sort of bubble or political proclamation, one after the other, to kind of give good headlines, but not actually anything that's actionable. So, right now, remember, crime is a public health crisis. Oh wait, no, it's no longer a public health crisis. Now it's acts of terrorism. Now, is it both? Which one is it? Are we moving on from the public health situation? Because we haven't even necessarily seen anything actually implemented with regards to the public health crisis of crime. So this is the latest that's come out of CARICOM. CARICOM leaders have apparently agreed to classify certain criminal acts involving guns as acts of terrorism. There are issues with that. However, there is also part of it that is justifiable. Just, I guess, the implementation is incorrect off the jump based by what is said. And I'll try to explain later, right? And this came with the end of the 48th CARICOM regular heads of government meeting in Barbados that just happened a couple of days ago. This is Prime Minister Rowley's last meeting. Presumably one of the things that the Prime Minister had to do before he basically gave the reins over to expected interim Prime Minister Stuart Young before we go to the next general election. He just didn't want to leave things. And this is understandable, by the way, right? This was planned for him to attend. He couldn't just put this on Stuart Young's plate. It wouldn't necessarily be proper. And we're not talking about, oh, he's going to a war zone in order to lead troops personally or anything like that. This is, okay, there's a meeting, there's a conference that was part of his agenda, CARICOM's agenda. Let him finish it out because it's his responsibility. That's fine. Now, the problem with this is, and I don't know if CARICOM has thought this out, but I have something from the European Union that says, you know, when terrorism spreads, states are often tempted to restrict fundamental freedoms for the sake of fighting it and prevent further attacks. However, misuse of anti-terrorism legislation has become one of the most widespread threats to freedom of expression, including media freedom in Europe. I edited the paragraph. There's more to see there. You could look up misuse of anti-terror legislation threatens freedom of expression. You could look that up. You should see an article on the European Union's, Commissioner for Human Rights. This is one of those things where every gun crime cannot be an act of terror. Robbery can't be an act of terror. A domestic situation that leads to murder, suicide cannot be an act of terror. Because then, yes, it's controversial. What is the definition of terrorism? I have already, and yes, Gary Griffith has technically proposed this a year ago. And I technically disagree with him then, although I understood the practical motivations why he said it. I still disagree, and it's for essentially a similar, if not including, the reasoning behind this European Union Commission of Human Rights article, that if you misuse terrorism laws and you set that precedent, then, you know, give them an inch, they could take a mile. And how far will it go? Terrorism is the use of violence in order to meet a political objective. One of the reasons why I think that this is implemented wrong straight off the jump is the fact that, in my opinion, terrorism laws have a certain level of severity because, ultimately speaking, the perpetrators do not care about normal legal consequences for what they're doing. If you're a suicide bomber, you don't fear arrest. Your intention is to die in the attack. So standard traditional laws aren't going to cut it. But now, do we need to apply that type of law to all acts of gun violence? Or let's go, because the Prime Minister highlighted the mass casualty events, I believe, right, when he was speaking. Now, to some extent, here's the key part. The general idea of this move does have merit in the sense that crime has gotten out of control. So you need to identify, okay, in what areas are the traditional methods. Now, granted, it seems as though the methods that our police investigators and police service use are not effective off the jump. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that even if you have working police methods, our violence have gone beyond the norm, where you commit a violent act, the police investigate, they catch you. No. Because to some extent, like terrorists, our local criminals, they seem to not fear consequences to a degree that it makes it a lot more difficult for the law to essentially push back against them, to make them feel as though they shouldn't be doing these things because they wouldn't want to face the consequences. No, it seems that they don't care about the consequences. So CARICOM now, to some extent, is not necessarily wrong thinking we need to change the way we do things, but to use the anti-terrorism label. That's where I have an issue. Because there's a temptation, and I've seen it before. All crime that causes fear is terrorism. Well, crap, then political corruption to some extent causes anxiety. Is that terrorism? Domestic violence, is that terrorism? Do we need an entire interrogation and intelligence outfit in order to deal with a domestic situation? What about school violence? Is that terrorism? What about if a citizen threatens another citizen because they were drunk? Is that terrorism? Road rage, is that terrorism? Road rage can traumatize families if they are caught in the middle of it. And when does it end? Because terrorism usually, given the nature of it, it's political violence, it has international ties, you would call in your international partners. Hey, is all gun violence terrorism? So we're going to call in our international partners for what? What about if it's a fake gun? That invokes terror. Because you don't know it's a fake gun, right? Is that terrorism? And I guess you could potentially put the fault in people that label terrorism with the label terrorism. Linguistically, it probably was not the best choice. But terrorism was used to describe a certain type of crime that didn't just use violence, but had a political motivation that, again, made it difficult for traditional law enforcement to deal with because perpetrators of terrorism don't care about your laws. They have it's almost well, in some cases it is a religious calling to martyr themselves, both figuratively and literally, depending. And I would argue, I can't speak to other Caribbean countries, but at least in TNT, perhaps to some extent we're starting to touch on that territory. But to utilize anti-terrorism laws, I believe, would set a bad precedent. You should be, because I'm pretty sure you would need a 3/5 majority or more anyway. You can't just say, oh, we'll slap our I don't know if you can. Maybe you can. I believe that was what the justification for Gary's line of thought last year. If you're just going to say we're going to slap anti-terrorism laws on gang violence, that will be very interesting once the eventual lawsuits come down the pipe. Or at least the criminal defenses, then potentially the eventual lawsuits, right? Because that's the other thing. You misuse the label, you might not actually be able to prosecute based on trying to call it terrorism. It all depends on how the law is written and how judges interpret the law and blah, 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 blah. So again, the correct way would be, we have a gun violence problem. What do we use to improve our laws so that our law enforcement criminal justice system would be more effective with the problem that we have, as opposed to, oh, let's just use the laws that we have for that thing over there that doesn't necessarily equate to what's going here 100%, and we'll kind of do a ratch. You could use that as a template. You could use that as a basis. But we already have apparently very strong anti-gang laws that are ineffective because of a whole host of technical reasons. So again, I wonder, and to what extent is the precedence of using anti-terrorism laws on non-traditional terrorism crimes going to have consequences down the line? One of it could be like what the EU said. It could eventually set a precedent to allow other aspects to come into play. And then, when freedom of expression is curtailed and the press no longer have freedom, you will ask yourself, who's going to defend us then? Because once it gets to that point, it's very easy for things to devolve to the point of no return. And also, there was this little piece. One criminologist, I do believe, basically said it could harm tourism because we have gang violence. And what do we not want? We don't want all of these YouTubers coming down here and saying, oh, look how bad and dangerous Trinidad is. We're like, no, it's not that bad. In fact, the government themselves tried to arrest Christopher Hughes for, I don't know how that would have stuck. But anyway, they tried to arrest one of them because they didn't like the fact that we were being painted in a negative light. I wonder what's saying, oh, well, we have domestic terrorism now. It's not gang violence, it's domestic terrorism. Because that's what essentially this is going to, you think that the foreign press owes it to you to report in the minutiae, and then on top of that, will they believe you and therefore not interpret it however they want to interpret it, regardless of whether or not they actually bother with the details as you give it to them. Because if you're willing to pull out anti-terrorism laws, meanwhile, I'll just close by saying this. The opposition leader, she is against it. She has decried the announcement as ineffective. It's a PR gimmick, like the crime symposium. I can't fault her for saying that. I can't. It's just that, like I said before, she has so many unforced errors on her end. I find, ironically, it weakens my position because it agrees with her, and I don't necessarily view her. Other people will disagree with me, and there are people who think she is a strong speaker. I don't. I don't see her speaking from a position of moral high ground on this or any other issue, to be honest. So I don't know to what extent people in the middle have similar thoughts to me. I could be the only one. I could be the only one. I am a madman. I am off my rockers. I don't have a clue. But I think there are enough people that look at the two parties as different sides of the same coin, and they're gonna, to some extent, they might not disagree with what the opposition leader says, but they're gonna take it with a grain of salt because at the end of the day, We can't say that the crime talks are only because the PNM didn't want it. Let's take a break. We'll have our media ambassador. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point on WESN. Don't know if we could take the break quite now, but we'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1, find the style number on the tag. Step 2, match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3, search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2.
Why? You're jealous because the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No.
Let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Well, folks, you know the song Carnival is here once again, and of course, there are a lot of concerns, despite the fact that to some extent, Carnival is one of the most safer times of the year, arguably, at least on a practical level, in that limited window of the year, our national security system does know, at least to some extent, what it's doing. They do have plans that have worked, but that doesn't mean that crime does not exist and risks don't exist for all of us, right? Regardless of how good the national response is to emergencies, to crime situations, to accidents and what have you. And of course, to speak on that, because as we know, the TTBS media ambassadors could talk about some of these low-hanging fruit situations that easily we could all just listen to their advice and avoid certain problems, but somehow, and maybe that's its use with our information dissemination in society, people still fall victim to the marketplace, people still drink and drive during the fetes, and things still happen. Things that they have said before, you've heard it before, but we want to get the comprehensive list. Again today, we have our media ambassador, ASP Ashraf Ali. Oh gosh, I did it. Oh, I'm so sorry, I did it. Christopher Arun, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. I think I want to just shrivel up in a corner right now. Oh my God.
Don't worry about it. Thanks very much, Sean. Good day to your viewers and national public abroad. Well, of course, you know, the Media Ambassador program speaks to safety tips and, you know, the current situations with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. As you know, we're in the Carnival period, and of course, we would speak about Carnival safety tips. We have the implementation of the glass bottle prohibition, where from 4 a.m. on Monday morning, Carnival Monday morning, to midnight on Tuesday, Carnival Tuesday night, you won't be allowed around events or in events of Carnival, with, considering Carnival with glass bottles.
Would this also apply to the weekend activities or activities in this week?
No,
or not
the prohibition is specifically
for
through that
Carnival.
period. Yeah.
I mean, I would argue that maybe we could do with it even before.
Yeah.
But granted, it's not as though we have a whole host of glass bottle stabbings every year.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not necessarily advocating, but I mean, this essentially is a safety situation, right? And people need to understand, like, I guess if a member of the public you're served in a glass bottle, you should kind of look at this very funny and maybe do everything you can to not have it on you.
Right. So, and it would be specifically during that period and at Carnival events or areas around the Carnival event.
Right, so if you're in your home, you know.
No, of course not. So you could go to the grocery and purchase your alcoholic beverages, or a bar that's not close to a Carnival event.
So this also includes like the hard liquor bottles.
Of
like
course,
you can't take a bottle of whiskey and shot it. No, because you know people on their wildness and they would pour it straight into their mouth and say no.
And traditionally, I've seen merchandisers gear the alcoholic beverages to be sold in plastic bottles around the sun.
Now, if a member of the public is caught with a glass bottle in their hand, what will be the potential repercussions?
Right, so the fine is $1,000, and I believe the imprisonment is 6 months. So in Trinidad and Tobago, most of our laws tend to be discretionary with the magistrate. So you have a period, you have between 0 and 100. So the penalty is a maximum of $1,000 fine and to imprisonment. So it could be 0 imprisonment, but the maximum is 6 months. It could be 0 fine.
Okay.
But the maximum is $1,000.
Okay.
So the magistrate has some leeway
I mean,
based on their discretion.
The imprisonment probably costs more than $1,000.
Yeah, nobody
right?
wants to be in prison for a glass of
6 months, like, and it can happen, right?
Yeah.
And I guess, of course, even worse, don't be foolish enough to say, oh, somebody fighting me and I see a glass bottle there, I'm going to pick it up and use it, right? Well, you potentially could end up,
It would go towards your defense.
It would go towards, well, like, let's take the context of the fight out of it. The point is you think it's a good idea to engage in a violent act with a glass bottle. I assume that would just compound the situation.
Of course, yeah. Of course.
Now, there are other things. I guess the obvious low-hanging fruit is drinking and driving, especially now.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that. We have I don't have the stats, but we have seen an increase in the amount of persons being arrested for drinking and driving under the influence of alcohol. And we want to warn members of the public that during this time, we have enhanced our road safety measures. There are a lot of roadblocks and breathalyzer exercises ongoing, especially during the carnival period. It is ongoing because of the SOE, but it's also ongoing because of the carnival period.
Yeah, I mean, there's a high expectation.
And we have actually seen an increase in accidents, and we're asking members of the public, again, be careful when you're driving under the influence. You should not drive under the influence of alcohol. Utilize a system, for example, what they call somebody who doesn't drink.
A designated driver.
A designated driver.
Yeah.
And
a proper designated driver, not the guy that drinks less.
Yeah, a proper designated. Because once you take in alcohol, once you drink alcohol, you should not drive at all.
Right.
Because you do not know how you will be able to handle the roadway. Even if you tell yourself, yes, I can handle it, we've seen fatalities emerging from people falling asleep or even being intoxicated. So use the designated driver, use avenues such as privately hired taxis and whatnot to take you from area to area.
A couple of things. One, when you communicated with me on the topic, it also mentioned drugs.
Yeah.
How much concern is there? Have you noticed, generally speaking, I know you know the stats, but have you noticed more drug use leading to impaired driving?
There have been incidents. To say there's an increase, because we've been recently taking those stats, there are incidents of persons using drugs and driving motor
Not
vehicles.
just marijuana?
No, of course not. Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, so you have the pill poppers and, other
Is this
drugs.
with, like, people
With
want to do
alcohol.
with
Of course,
with
they're
alcohol,
partying.
but also for the partying?
Yeah, of course. So they're partying, they're clubbing, they're fetting, and they're using these drugs and alcohol together.
One of the other phenomenon, now in the past it was, Friday I go to this fete, Saturday I go to this fete, Sunday I go to that fete. But now it's, Saturday afternoon I go to this fete, and then Saturday night I go to this fete, and then Sunday morning I go to this fete. Like, you just also mentioned people, okay, you might not necessarily be drunk, but you might pass out.
You might pass out.
But then on top of that now, sleep deprivation. Correct. Because, hey, you're a man or what? Sleep is pretty weak, right? I'm sure, yeah.
And I think by taking drugs, it will help enhance how they drive and how they stay up.
Keep them awake.
Yeah.
But I guess even if you're not drinking or taking drugs, if you're just, okay, you're the designated driver, but you don't get any sleep either.
Right.
Like, to some extent, there's also that risk, right?
Of course. So don't take the risk. Park up the vehicle, sit in the vehicle, and park. If you want to park close to a police station, no problem. And when you feel better, you proceed to drive.
Especially if you have other people in the car with you.
Exactly.
Now, again, before we touch back on the FUL situation, there is, I'm not too sure to what extent we've spoken about it, but concerns with regards to child safety during Carnival, which this is reoccurring, right?
Yeah, this is a reoccurring issue. People tend to leave their children to supervise children, or leave their children unsupervised.
When you say children supervising, teenagers or like young preteens?
Both. So we're seeing, so it is against the law to have a child under the age of 18 supervise a child under the age of 18.
Right.
So in the previous Children's Act, it was catered for that a 17-year-old could have supervised minors, but that no longer exists. Since the introduction of the new Act 4601, in 2015, it has prohibited that avenue to utilize a senior child to supervise a minor.
I mean, this is where the village helped, because when I was very young, you know, my family got away with it because we had a auntie in the house. So if mom had to go out and, you know, my older brother wasn't old enough yet, there was still an auntie, right? Now, then eventually when, you know, my older brother became older and I became older, right? But there were times in between where it got awkward because there was no one to supervise, and you know, but this is the benefit of the village and not having it. It is what it is. But also, is there any concern, because there is the cases, of course, where yes, you know, your children say about yourselves and we hope that the house will burn down. But what about children potentially getting lost in Carnival? I don't know if you've heard anything about that.
That's a usual incident that occurs around every time. And what we do, when we have Carnival events in a large way, like in Port of Spain, San Fernando, maybe Arima, what we do, we have mobile booths set up where you could take children and they would take over the police officers.
You as an adult, you see a child, looks like they're lost.
Correct.
Right?
You can inform the police, who would normally be in the carnival session, and you inform them that you believe this child is lost, or you take them to the nearest police officer in uniform or to the mobile booth.
So also, I guess this is just a heads up. Folks, if you lost your child and you see a stranger talking to your child, don't just assume that they're kidnappers.
Yeah, and under Section 4 of the Children's Act, it does speak of cruelty, abandonment, and these issues. And one of the things we've noticed in the past is that people would have toddlers, even infants, in stroller and taking them around to carnival events. And just where the music is booming, loudspeakers, you have the child, because you want to
feel the boom.
Yeah, you want to party.
I'll never understand that, huh?
And you have the child there. The act does cater for harm or something that tends to cause harm to a child that could be considered cruelty under the act.
Like, I feel like whenever I'm in clubs and the bass is just there's just too much power in the bass, I get sick. So I don't understand, physically it could make me nauseous. So I don't understand this, we need to feel the bass to party.
But far less for children, especially very young children, infants. And the police does have the power to arrest you under the Children's Act. They may use the discretion of warning you and asking you to leave the event or to move away, but it's up to the police officer if they believe. And then the child could be taken for medical to see if any damage was done or injury to them. And as I said, the act does speak about actions that tend to cause harm. So it doesn't mean that harm was caused. It may, the incident could have caused harm, and it's enough to charge you for the offense of cruelty.
I mean, last week Friday, I did see an incident where there was a very large, very stacked music truck at a very small event for kids. Police were there. Now, I passed on the side that was not facing the kids, so maybe that's where a lot of the volume was coming from, which was against the building. So I can't say that the kids were right in it. They didn't seem uncomfortable, but I was like, why do we need to have such a big music truck in such a confined space for children? But I guess, you know, it was what it was. It's probably worse in Carnival when you have multiple trucks just stacked one behind the other.
And then, so police officers would be on the lookout to ask you to leave or move away from music with children, with minors like that.
I mean, I don't why you think to take a child or a baby in a stroller. The baby in a stroller is the worst part.
And we have the issue of the parents are also leaving elderly people who are maybe incapacitated to supervise children. That in itself,
my old auntie was not incapacitated.
And that in itself, it could be a form of abandonment. Because you fail to provide proper supervision for each child, and you could be liable to investigation and to be charged for the offense of cruelty. We have done it in the past. We have done it in the past where people left their children. Children have drowned in a barrel. Children have set the house on fire. So we're asking, especially, you know, these things tend to happen in a big way in Trinidad. In trees, we're asking people, let's not have it happen at all in Trinidad.
Why do things always have to happen?
And Tobago, let's supervise our children.
I mean, to be fair, you know, I wasn't no special child that with supreme intelligence. I myself, I'm like, how did I not do something stupid to cause something stupid when I was small, right? But I guess it's because, ultimately speaking, I wasn't left to my own devices to that extent, huh?
Children now, they're coming out with computer degrees and science degrees.
I think, but the problem is,
brighter than us.
yeah, but here's the problem. They don't have any actual practical knowledge sometimes on how the real world works. They know how the computer works.
Right. No, I mean, just saying that to say that they tend to be a little bit more curious. And
right, but then of course it's really funny watching young people online, young streamers, you know, failing to cook.
Yeah.
Whereas I wasn't necessarily capable of cooking when I was a teenager, but I knew enough of my peers who knew cooking.
Now they take the phone from me and say, listen, you don't know how to do that, you're old. You're born in the 1900s, and they take the phone and...
Yeah, that's the phone. I'm talking about life skills, right?
Right.
Like the phone, you can't get taught life skills of Trinidad from a YouTuber in the United States. All right. No. The last part, and again, this is one that to be fair, I don't think I really even thought about. We've spoken about it before, but we want to reiterate it. So it was kind of new to me when you brought it up with regards to FULs and firearms. I mean, it seems obvious, but at the same time,
so
you know,
alcohol and firearms do not mix.
Basically,
right. Feds and firearms do not mix.
But now when you're on the road, Carnival, Monday, Tuesday, leave your gun at home.
Yeah, because we've experienced people going and jumping up on Juve morning, and they're losing the firearm because they had a firearm on them and then jumping up. You know, they lose the firearm. You would be charged.
Or it could potentially be stolen if someone notices it.
Of course, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just the alcohol. Yeah, that's a bad combination. You might be reckless.
Right.
It's also you might not be aware of what you lost. It could be a shades. It could be a firearm.
Yeah.
You went from one end of the avenue to the other, back up Tragreet Road. Yeah. Good luck finding that.
I remember this guy, he had his firearm in his pouch, what they call it, fanny pack.
Yeah.
And he went to a Juve and he was jumping up. And easily, the zip got undone. And the firearm fell out. And it was retrieved by the police.
Okay, he's lucky that it didn't misfire.
Well, I suspect he was charged by the police officers for losing his fire.
Yeah, but what if it fell out? And let's just say the safety was, you know.
Well, there's something called the drop test, and 99% of firearms pass the drop test. So, yeah.
99%. Yeah. Listen, there's always a 1%, folks.
Yeah,
that's the problem, right? There's always a chance.
Yeah, and then you want to make sure your firearms are secured at home, away from the hands of children. Tests have shown that, studies have shown that within 7 minutes, a child would pull the trigger. And average time is 7 minutes.
Curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity.
And I guess that's the other reason why you don't leave children unsupervised.
Unsupervised. If you need to go, if you are unable to supervise your children properly, stay home, put on the radio, look at the television, and have your drinks at home. Party at home.
I mean, that's the other thing. At least with the events leading up to Carnival Monday and Tuesday, I do wonder if, unless you really are doing everything properly and responsible, don't just catch up apps and go somewhere, because I don't know if it's safe to do that. Huh?
Right, and even in that case, we've actually seen during Carnival period where people drown at beaches and rivers and whatnot.
Oh, Lord.
So there are people who don't support Carnival and celebrate Carnival and whatnot.
No,
and they would go to the beaches.
But I'm talking about, there's pan, or there's this, or there's that. And let's just go on. You don't have a plan. You don't get a park. You're not parking somewhere sketchy.
Right.
You don't think it out. And in this day and age, being randomly somewhere in the middle of the night is not necessarily the best thing to do.
Of course, the unguarded moment tends to happen.
Right, but then, yeah, I guess that's the other thing, folks. Like, it's Carnival. Don't take things for granted. You still supervise the child if you take them to the beach. You still have to, you know. And then, of course,
it's your responsibility.
Certain things might be closed, so you can't expect, oh, if I need this, or if I need that, I could get it. No, it's Carnival Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah.
So stock up on whatever essential supplies, medication, foodstuffs. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
And if you need to party and you don't have anybody to supervise your children, stay at home.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also don't necessarily get drunk at home and there's no
there's poor supervision.
There's no sober adults. Wouldn't that just be like both problems, both bad situations colliding?
Yeah. I remember yesterday or Saturday. Friday, one of my colleagues was telling me that they had, where they lived, they had neighbors who used to drink a lot. They had children and whatnot. And they would have to go across because they would start to cook. And then both parents would fall asleep. And they would have to go and take off the stove because everything in the stove burnt or everything in the pot burnt and whatnot. So yes, we see cases like that. And again, if you fall asleep and leave the children unattended, you could be liable to be charged with the offense of cruelty.
I think the last thing to close up, there's another way that both bad situations could come together, and that's if you do take the child out for carnival, and then you think it's still a good idea to take a little drink on top of that.
No, well, some people could drink moderately and handle it.
I mean, I understand you're speaking from a practical point of view, but unfortunately when you speak to the population, you have to be a little bit more like, listen, just because you moderate, it's like, yes, moderate. Other people like, yeah, 16 stag, moderate. You know, some trainings are 16 stag and some punching. That's moderate.
I just want to say on the issue of drinking and driving, I've experienced being in a number of roadblocks. And we stop every single person we stop and ask, have you had anything to drink tonight? Yes, 2 beers. The answer has always been 2 beers or two shots of whiskey or two shots of alcohol. Because for some reason, it's in the public domain that the average amount of alcohol to have is probably 2 beers for your limit not to go up. I've seen people drink 1 beer and the limit does exceed the specified amount.
It's not just the amount of alcohol you intake, but
it's
also
how your body handle it.
Right.
Yeah. You might actually drink cough medicine.
Let me guess. If you're 400 pounds and 6'8", 1 beer might not move the needle. If you're 5'0" and like 98 pounds, man or woman, that's the end of that.
And it's always better to administer the test, take the test, as opposed to not take the test, because you will be arrested for failing to provide a specimen of breath for the test.
Right.
So make sure
you can't hide from it.
Yeah, you shouldn't hide from it because the police officers would generally.
No, really and truly, when they say 2 beers, like when I limit myself to 2 drinks, usually I get looked at funny, right? So how many really? It was really 2 beers?
Right.
Like, is it that when they say 2 beers, like they usually is some kind of sign that the odds of it being 2 beers is very unlikely?
And it's very unlikely that every single person we stop just had 2 beers.
To be fair, 2 shots of anything is worse than 2 beers, folks. So that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. You call in and have your say. Of course, there are many things that you could talk about that I mentioned, that the ASP mentioned, or not. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents. the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
I'm back here talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small with ASP. Christopher Arun. I kind of almost half did it. Oh gosh, you see when it starts, all of a sudden, it's one of those things where you can't help yourself, and then you just start making the mistake over and over and over again.
I think you're mine on Ashraf Ali.
Oh, geez, Anita's. When you say it like that, what does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't know. Maybe,
Chris?
Maybe you wanted him here instead of me. I don't know. I could think maybe it's like that.
No, actually, I find it's very good. You all have different approaches.
Yeah.
And of course, different experiences.
Right.
So it gives a more informed discussion on the situation.
I think he's more learned in law as opposed to me who did criminology. So, yeah. Maybe, I don't
know if he did law. I never heard that he did law.
I don't know. I think he was in the academy, so I think he would have done
that
type of studies.
Anyway, folks, let's open the phone lines. You can call in and have your say. The phone numbers on your screen. Of course, when you call in, if you call in, please do not try to be on the phone line and talk to us while following on television. There's a delay. It does not work. You'll be confused, so please mute your television if and when you call. Now, with that said, I think we covered everything with regards to carnival safety.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a last point. I guess this is obvious low-hanging fruit, and you would hope people will not be so bold, but not driving with a valid driver's license when there's going to be police all over.
Yeah, especially with the roadblocks and the SOE.
The SOE.
You could be detained or asked, your vehicle could be detained until you provide a driving permit or a driver that could potentially drive the vehicle.
Now, to what extent do people really kind of put this to the test?
Not really. Most people most likely leave their driver's permit at home accidentally when driving.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things. I think some people during Carnival, they might not want to walk with a lot of things, but you still have to have your DP
Right, but you would
be
liable. Yeah, you would be liable to an investigation where the officer could ask you to provide your driver's permit. Because driving without a driver's permit, if you have never been issued one, you can be arrested for that. So the officer would have to conduct some inquiry to determine if you were indeed issued with a valid driver's permit.
And this is the other thing. Don't expect your minor could drive you home.
Right.
No matter how capable they are.
And listen, if in the case of, that we recently saw a case where two minors took a vehicle and drove it, allegedly drove it, without driver's permit, or they borrowed a vehicle, allegedly borrowed a vehicle and got into an accident and died. If we
it's the joyride,
yeah, it's not to fear the police, and you fear the arrests and you fear the consequences. At the end of the day, it's a traffic offense. Yes, there are consequences to it, but if you don't have your driver's permit, just simply tell the officer, and they would conduct a small inquiry to ensure that you are the holder of a valid driver's permit. You can still be issued a ticket for driving without a valid driver's permit, But if you've never had a valid driver's permit, you can be arrested for it.
One of the things that as you brought that up, I think people need to understand. You're right. Don't fear the police, and parents need to tell their children why not to do this, because the police is not the worst thing that could happen. Is one, an accident where they lose their life.
Yeah.
But also think about it. Common citizen having to deal with road rage. You don't know who this person is.
Yeah.
They might be a criminal with a gun. That's a risky situation in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
Now imagine if you have your two children go off on a joyride and they bad drive somebody who does not care about breaking a law or two.
Right. And
that's the kids, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to be there? You hope the police is right behind them to protect them.
So in these cases, it's a traffic offense. Don't fear the police. You've already reached into the situation. Be very careful and legitimate and clear with the officers who stop you. What if you have done anything wrong? Just let them know, and they may use their discretion. You never know.
Just my own personal curiosity, because this always comes up. You don't realize you have to renew your license until it's like right on the day or right after.
Yeah. And the insurance. It happens a lot. Hopefully, there are some companies that will let you know, listen, your insurance is going to expire, and they renew it automatically. We've seen cases recently here where people have been driving and it's just a few days off. The officers did use their discretion.
Right.
But it's up to the officer. They don't need to use their discretion.
There's no automatic grace.
There's no automatic
grace period.
No, definitely not. But there are insurance companies that issue the permit, the insurance, the certificate of insurance, even though you have not paid as yet. It's an automatic. So you could probably get that and show the officer and whatnot.
Yeah. All right, we have Sam on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Good morning to Sean.
Morning.
A quick one. Now, I must admire and I do follow and support all the initiatives that the police put forward, especially the roadblocks, okay?
Yeah.
Whether it be carnival or not. I feel safe when I do that. Some kidnapper might be in my car, whatever. No, I have a little problem. The thing is, when we have posts going up on Facebook, right, and parents and all that, I take it that the police do find time to go and investigate more about it, especially with child abuse and so on.
Of course, yeah. We have the social and cybercrime unit.
Right, good. But we also have similar posts of large amount of money missing from the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago. But we don't hear them saying, we're going to investigate that. You know why? Because they see somebody trying to make a report. Why somebody trying to make a report when all these things are in the public domain?
Right.
Police are supposed to be proactive and go and investigate.
No, well, once something comes into the public domain, the police will respond.
But so far we haven't heard anything.
Well, I think I know the specific. Caller, are you talking about the Auditor General's report and the funds that
That's correct. That's correct, and I want to be careful. I don't go. Go ahead.
No. I mean, I'll finish up because I'm not too sure exactly. I'm not entirely sure. Even I want to respond to what you just said just yet. So I don't know if you have anything left to go with.
No. Just that 2.5. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, caller. That's a tricky one because, to be honest, I understand what you're saying, and ideally, yes, the police will just, we'll investigate. But that's just, I don't know how to put it. First of all, to some extent, missing money could be an accounting error.
Could be an error. And it was before the court, as far as I understand. It was in the court's realm. And it continues to be at the disposal of the courts, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's a back and forth and whatnot. And at some point in time,
like if you arrest them, it would then go to the court. Like it's kind of there already.
Right. So if the Auditor General does detect that it was an accounting error, it remains as an accounting error. If he or she determines it's a fraud, or lastly they make a report.
Right.
Yeah. And there are things in place to investigate that internally, and then to hand over to the police.
Like to some extent, I hate to say this because it seems like a cop-out, but how it appears to the public, just because it looks like wrongdoing and it's probably unethical behavior, doesn't mean that it's a crime that the police could easily just... Because look what happened when they arrested the commissioner, and we don't know what the crime was yet, right?
Right.
So
and
to just
in the
say
case
arrest...
in the case of these types of investigation that he spoke about, there is the FIB that would monitor the...
Because part of it is they need to figure out who to arrest.
Right.
They can't just arrest.
Correct. And they would have to initiate an investigation and the investigation would lead to whoever is responsible and whatnot.
Now, not that I'm going to say that there is an investigation going on, and there have been, because I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily like hearing, oh, we'll talk to experts about parias. Like, it's been 3 years. You know,
Right.
now talking to experts about paria for the police investigation. Now, but I will say this, it is possible that the FIU did look into it.
Correct.
They, again, like...
Or are they are looking
Or they are looking into
Yeah.
it, because you can't just assume and arrest people and then try and figure out later. That
Right.
is potentially what leads to the lawsuits for wrongful
Right.
arrest, or
Yeah.
however it is
Yeah.
that we get into the system.
Yeah, so there are cases where the police would arrest immediately, you know, for want of inquiries that would prevent them from eluding capture and that kind of thing. But in cases where the police know that the suspect is available, and they would do an investigation first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, to some extent, in this case, the suspect is, like, when the suspect includes the government, you
Right.
can't just arrest the government, you
So
investigate.
Again, yeah, and again, it could be an accounting error. Could be a dot, a zero, something missing, something that came up wrongfully on the paperwork. We don't know. At this time, I can't speak on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like, this is one of those things
But-
that it's not gonna be satisfactory to members of the public, but I kind of understand that it doesn't quite work like that, unless you have a smoking gun that
Right,
says, this document says $3 billion was stolen outright.
Right, and again, there are policies in place for reporting to show this is a government agency, and if there is any need for investigation, the party that is responsible for accounting for the lost or the funds that are missing, they would report it to the
Yeah,
police.
so like if there's a post about a murder, y'all could
Correct,
go in
that's-
on
yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
But there are some things that's in the news with regards to white collar stuff that
Correct,
you can't just act per se, in part because, well, I mean, this is one of those things where I understand and don't understand
But
at
there
the
are
same
policies
time.
in place.
I'll be honest, right?
No, but there
Yeah.
are policies in place, governmental policies, that if these errors are not errors, but in fact fraud or larceny, they would report it to the police.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, like, I understand what you're saying, and I kind of understand how it should work, but then there's a part of me that doesn't fully understand why it has to work that way. It's just one of those weird things. We have San Fernando in line, I think, back on the line. Good morning, caller. Caller?
Good morning, Sean.
Oh, other San Fernando.
Good
morning.
Good morning, ASPR.
Hi, good day.
And in Sean's defense, you see, Ashraf Ali rolls off the tongue easier. I just say that. I just say that. It rolls off the tongue easier.
No,
But
also both last names begin with A, all right? So...
However, I would like the police service to understand we need more officers to be as articulate as yourself, to how things roll off, how you speak, how your demeanor, everything. That's what we need. A little more of you.
Thanks very much.
Let me say this. You all had you always heard you in the hierarchy they talk about the in-your-face policing.
Yeah.
And in-your-face policing, I understand what is meant by it. However, over the last few weeks, you've been coming and you're having these carnival safety tips.
Right.
And I think that should also be in-your-face policing. Another approach to it.
Okay.
It's like one of the biggest fast food or the biggest fast food outlet in the country got there because they were advertising all the time.
Right, yeah.
You were
yeah.
seeing the signs
Right.
everywhere you go. And we need a little more of that in terms of getting the population aware of certain things.
Yeah, correct.
It's not just the law enforcement enforcing that part, but putting it out there. And this safety tip, we have a lot of, and with the younger generation, the school children and stuff. If we have it, you all have a unit there that could put out TikToks, and because a lot of the younger people are on those social media platforms, put out little TikToks for them to see. So it pops up. It pops up on the feed ever so often.
Correct.
And
we do have this the WhatsApp channel that we spoke about on the last occasion.
Yes, the WhatsApp channel, but they have to go to that. You see, on the TikToks, it will come up on their feeds.
Correct. Yeah.
And they will see it. So a little more of that, because this last few weeks have been very informative
Yeah.
in terms of
Well, that's not a bad recommendation. I'll definitely make the recommendation to the media department.
Because because what happens is when you put, that's how, as I said, that is how that fast works. Because it was always, it's in your face all the time.
Correct.
And these are the things that stick in people's heads, especially the young people.
Yeah.
Especially young people, and a lot of things we take for granted.
Right. Well, we tend to use the traditional media because, you know, it's a conversation, it's a in-person kind of situation.
Oh, you mean with interviews?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Right. Yes.
But I understand what Mr. Sanfano is saying, to try to reach them and
yeah, correct. And
TikTok might be unique in the sense of it that if you like put a TNT flag on it or depending on how you hashtag it or whatever, I'm not social media savvy, that might automatically come up as opposed to trying to advertise on the internet, which will cost.
Because I mean this. I have well, my kids are over 18, but they home, and the only person that watches the television is me.
Okay.
Everybody else is on a tablet or a laptop.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Everybody else.
Everybody, yeah.
I think
that is I don't know if it's a generational thing. Probably it is.
It's definitely a generational thing. We have officers that are on TikTok that I don't really necessarily follow, but
right.
They are. I don't think they're part of the media ambassador program.
Mr. San Fernando, as someone who is both a professional and amateur student of media, it's just one of those things where traditional media, we went from radio to television, now television to the internet. And it's not as though I don't think television will die, because that's, you know, at some point they will kind of mesh into one.
Yeah.
Radio has already kind of meshed into the internet as well to some extent.
Yes.
But there will always be certain niche avenues or certain niche products that will have to be available, like car radio.
But it's definitely a good idea. So I'll let the Miss Archie at media ambassador.
Thank you, caller. Yeah, I mean, I myself don't look at that much television, but every now and then I do, because I like to not just sit in the chair in front of my computer for the entirety of all of my time off. So, you know, you relax, you stretch, maybe you go for outside of your room for some fresh air, see what's on the tube.
But and the Media Ambassador program is across the board on radio and television.
Right.
It is almost every day. So this program is on a Monday, but there are programs on other days.
You see, like local media will never die, because you need to still have someone to give you your news.
Yeah.
Right? We can't get the TTPS Media Ambassadors safety tips from NBC or CNN.
No.
That's right? So, or YouTube.
No.
Now, maybe our local media will turn to a more online platform and less of a traditional TV broadcast.
Yeah.
But that is, you know, then you're kind of blurring the lines, what have you. Will it still reach the young people? That'll be an interesting question.
Yeah, and I think that's the audience we need to target, especially when you're talking crime prevention and crime strategy, and you know, we want that information out there as well.
I think part of the problem that you all have has actually no fault of the TTPS, and this is with regards to how our society has developed our young people to engage with news and important events.
Right.
So I don't think they necessarily look to seek out, even if it includes important things that would say, oh, your fete might be cancelled because there's a roadblock. Like, they might not even think about looking out for stuff like that.
Yeah, and you saw the evolution from print media to traditional media like TV and radio. Kids tended to stay away from the newspaper, the print, and looked at television.
Yeah.
And now with the social media, you're seeing that evolution again.
The thing is, they would still get some news because that's what was put on the TV at dinner time, 7 o'clock.
7 p.m.,
Right? So, you know, it's just one of those, I mean, honestly, if I had a choice, we wouldn't be watching the news, because I would like to get away from all of the things that depress me when I'm trying to enjoy my evening meal. But I mean, maybe there's a case where perhaps news media locally not just other stakeholders need to evolve in utilizing platforms like TikTok. I understand the whole ADD, or you need to do 30-second sound bites, otherwise they won't hold their attention, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But at the same time, there's also something to be said about get to the point.
Right.
Right? And this is, again, this is not a problem with the police. This is rather our whole media industry, not just media houses, but well, maybe not advertisers, but all of the people whose job, and to some extent advertisers, when it comes to disseminating information, needs to figure out the most efficient channels in the new environment.
Yeah.
And who knows what that will look like. But the flip side to that is, I do think, you see, like in the States where you have university students that care about issues, don't mind that half the time they're kind of stupid and they don't know what to talk about, but they care and they engage, right? And and then, of course, now, half of them do know what they're talking about because, you know, just on average, half will probably be wrong, half will probably be right.
Yeah.
They're engaged, and I don't know if our young people are engaged with stuff that happens in the States. They're not engaged with what happens in TNT.
Yeah, and you would want, I think the TTPS should look at getting itself towards that. The avenue of making it exciting to be a police. What's the exciting parts of policing to get people involved in or want to occupy, to become a police officer?
This might, and we could close with this. This might seem kind of bad, but I actually don't think it is. You remember, you know, back in the day when you would see ads for the Army or the Marines on the States on cable, you know, the few, the proud. But the thing is, it's not just to hype you up to go and die in some war.
No.
I think the idea was to get people with a certain mindset of patriotism and a sense of duty and responsibility to join. Not just, hey, you want to get a check?
Right.
But then also, how many people in the society that could be good police officers?
Correct.
That to some extent, like, it doesn't actually, like, they don't actually realize it. That message doesn't hit them.
No, correct. So, and that's the thing, we want the responsible, law-abiding citizens to become police officers, not just everybody who wants to become a police.
And to give it that sense of duty, because when you come in with that, and that's the foundation, it kind of permeates.
Yeah.
But you see, and okay, maybe we'll close with this. Even last week, I've said this, I have concerns with regards to, well, we don't really have that in society. So to now complain, oh, the police this and the police that, well, to some extent, as I believe Ashraf did say, if not you yourself as well, criminals, police, politicians, whoever you want to complain about, they come from society.
Society, correct,
right?
And,
they're products of society.
And we are a reflection of that,
Exactly.
So you get exactly what you give. So what we get from the society is what we give. But the policing must have a standard. Police officers must have a standard. They must have a behavior. They must have some decorum about themselves and how they operate. And we want that type of person to become police officers, people who are responsible, sober thinking, in their mind, they're well adapted to society and how you should be fair and the discretion you use, and it's not off-the-cuff reaction. So that's the officers we want. There are times that we must react, but there are times we must make sober-minded decisions.
I mean, ironically, as you say, you don't want off-the-cuff reaction, and yet think about society. You know, average man on the street, what are you going to get? Off-the-cuff,
and we understand society wants us to behave with the off-the-cuff reaction when it comes to murders and robberies, and you know, we should gun down the alleged perpetrators. We know that's
I don't have an issue with off-the-cuff emotion. I would still like some strategic and proper procedural thinking. But hey, be pissed off at murderers. I have no issue with this at all.
No, we can't do that. We can't be pissed off at murderers.
You could be mad. You just don't act in the anger.
Correct.
It could motivate you in the proper way. All right. I did say we'll end there, so that is a good point to end. It's something to think about, folks. It can't just put all the blame on them. We have to do our part too. Thanks to the callers for calling in, doing their part, I guess you could say, for this morning. Thanks for ASP Arun for joining me, of course, doing his part, both for the organization and for the country.
And thanks for everything. We'll be back on next week, Monday, no?
Well, obviously Carnival Monday, so I mean, I'm sure you will be busy as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, we have a number of duties that we are that I have to conduct. So, like this weekend, I don't know how the weekend was for you, that I visited Fiesta. It's the first time. I've always wanted to go to Fiesta, so we did it as a team. The Commissioner of Police was there. They did a patrol and whatnot in San Fernando.
Right.
He and his executive officers. And it was well received. It was well done. It was peaceful. I must say, first time going to the Fiesta, it was great. It was a great experience. The persons were very sober-minded and it was well thought of. The security was great. The persons behaved very well. And, you know, this is what we want to see in all the fetes and all the events and whatnot. We want to see people being responsible in what they do. And, you know, it makes the job easier for the police officers and for society on a whole. It was well orchestrated.
We have too low expectations of ourselves. But with that said, no, it will be the following Monday that we'll have. Unless, depending, we'll see, because it's only 2 days next week, so not entirely sure.
Of course, I'm committed to carnival duties.
Yes. So best of luck with that. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. Hopefully I didn't just go to Mount Carnival. But
and traditionally, we have seen carnival having very little to no incidents of a great nature or, you know, dangerous events. So hopefully people will continue to participate in carnival knowing that the police are on the ground, especially in Port of Spain and San Fernando and wherever the events are being held.
At the risk of good mouthing, fingers across, I do not want anything bad to happen to then talk about it. I hope for very boring Thursday and Friday show.
We're going to have a very safe carnival. So let's not jinx it.
Yes. Folks, make today a good day. As Mr. Shah would always say, remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe, and even if you don't like the person at bad drive here, it's still nice to be nice to him and everyone else you meet during the day. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order, or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokaram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this